And I know I've had a lot of conversations with other allies that are like, I want to help and I kind of want to go to these things, but I don't know if it's for me. And I do think it's important. Most of these spaces, I think, unless it says trans and trans and gender nonconforming people only, that you're probably welcome, and it would be probably I would encourage you to come. I'd also though encourage you to be mindful of how much space you take up in that and what you do with the space that you're taking it. Because I do feel like sometimes people can, I don't know, it's like one of the challenges I had, like I really wanted to spend more time with, say, the young people who weren't accessing healthcare or their parents and kind of talking a little bit about that. And we ended up, I mean, I think the great thing, and I don't want to criticize this particular circle because I think it went really well in meeting what we needed for that moment. But I think sometimes the challenge is, I think, and maybe the difficulty is being an ally is really, how do I fit into this picture? How do I show up and how do I not show up when I'm in these spaces? And those are things I would just encourage more allies to do the work and to show up and to learn, while also thinking about how are you in that space and are you taking the space or the energy from the trans non-binary folks in the room. I guess with that.
I think it's a hard line to walk.
Totally.
Because it's like such a difficult balance to achieve, right?
Yeah. But I want to challenge people to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I want to challenge as an ally that you wrestle with that a little bit.
I think it's necessary at this point because I know a lot of allies too, and they kind of feel helpless right now because they don't know what to do, but they also don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think the first step in anything is knowledge. Is getting the information and finding out what's going on. Because I'll talk to people about even like the Skrmetti case, and they have no idea what that even is.
Or that it was happening or anything like that.
Yeah, so many things like this, like different things that were outlined in Project 2025 that are starting, to come into fruition. And they just don't know. So I think in order to be a strong ally, you need to be educated on what's going on right now. And just in general, what's planned to happen, and then showing up in spaces like that. And I know it can be uncomfortable to feel like the odd person out or maybe like you don't belong there, but we want you there. We want you to know what's going on with us, because in certain spaces, your voice matters, and it matters so much more than ours do. And I think if people can utilize this privilege that they have, it could be really powerful and it can really help.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it matters more, but I would say that it's very important in helping us to begin to kind of like deepen, like a picture like a rock that you throw in the water and it goes further. Like in order for us to like deepen the ripple, make it go further, we need allies to, when we're not in the room, like use our pronouns, talk to us how we like to be talked as and about. When we're with other people, talk with non-trans and gender non-conforming people about the importance of understanding this. I always want to say Schenectady, or I always throw some Skrmetti case or any of those sorts of things. So I would encourage you also to have those conversations with non-trans and non-binary folks as well. Also, that might be a space where you can handle being a little messy, because, I think it does take a lot of emotional labor for trans and non-binary people to hear some of these questions and these things that are either done out of ignorance or out of like the best of intentions can be sometimes hard for us to take. But when you can be amongst people like you're more like yourself who might be struggling or wrestling or just learning, it might be best to kind of have those conversations around non-trans and non-binary people.
I completely agree. And when I say it matters more, I mean kind of in the sense that when there are men that are saying like really horrific sexist jokes or rape jokes or something, we encourage other men to challenge that and be like, oh, I don't get it, or why is that funny, or I can't believe you just said that out loud, things like that, because the other men respect that opinion more than they would a woman. And I feel it's the same way with us.
I agree,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
I think that that's just a harsh truth that we live with. Where if there was a group of people, like a group of cis straight men, maybe that are right leaning, if I were to approach them and say like, "Hey, I heard what you said. That's fucked up," I don't think that would end well for me. But if
Right.
if one of their peers were to challenge that, I think that that could really have an influence, or
Mhm.
it would be received a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I would ask allies to use their privilege in those spaces
Agreed.
to try and spread some understanding and maybe
Mhm.
some compassion in a way that only they can.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we can do this, until we're blue in the face, but there are certain groups and demographics that we just will never reach.
Yeah, they won't listen to us, they won't relate to us, just in the same ways that what we're going to take from other people is limited too, because we're just as guilty, or just as it's just within our nature that we're going to potentially, especially like an initial first meeting of somebody or somebody that you don't know really well, you're going to be looking for, what do we have in common with this person in order to help me feel a little bit more like I can trust or take heart what you have to say. And it's just something we naturally do. We don't think about it. I think we can do more. I know I do best. I know that I have so much more to learn and to grow from people who are different than myself. But I think oftentimes it does take that similarity initially for us to begin to crack that a little bit.
Yeah, especially now for me. But for me, it feels like a survival tool. So if I'm approached by someone who appears to be like right leaning, or I'm going to have my walls up,
Right.
and that's just because I'm trying to keep myself safe, because odds are if they might not perceive me in the best light.
Yeah.
And I try to challenge myself to get past that in safe spaces. So when we have areas like this, like that night at the ACLU thing, it's really beneficial for me to kind of open my mind too, because I do have these stereotypes in my mind of, who's going to be mean or dangerous. And a lot of the time I'm completely wrong, but I don't often get in those situations where I can interact with demographics like that
And be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Yep.
and
Totally.
feel safe doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a protective thing that we're going to do to look out for ourselves as vulnerable populations, or especially in certain settings, we're going to be looking for all those social cues and the language that people are using or not using in order to indicate, is this a safe place or is this not a safe place?